I want to spend just a few minutes talking about the idea of a happy marriage and how that's even achieved, or if it's even possible. I know a lot of us maybe came from houses where we didn't see a two-parent household, or if we did, it wasn't a very happy situation. And maybe, obviously that can make us wonder, is this even something that, even if it was achievable, is this something that we even want to achieve? Is this really a goal that we want to meet? And it's easy nowadays because we have access to so much knowledge to just dismiss something like, oh, that's just not my truth, or that didn't resonate with me, right? And we'll just keep searching and keep searching. But I do want to ask that you just consider what I'm saying now. The question that sparked this discussion, this video, is I was on social media. This was a couple months back. It just took me that long to think about it and process it. And the person said, why aren't people having long, happy marriages? Why aren't we having those long, happy marriages, those long, happy relationships that like our grandparents had? What's wrong? Let's have some real talk about this. And it was really easy to give an answer, but I found it very hard to give a good answer, a lasting answer. And I found that it can't be narrowed down to a simple one sentence thing. I know there's a lot of people who, oh, well, that's because of this, oh, that's because of this. And I don't want to come off as flippant like that, just real non-committal or something. I want this to be something that, really, it caused me a lot of thought, and I questioned what my answers were, and what my motives were. And I wanted to kind of share that with you. I think there's a few reasons, but I'm only going to focus on one. One thing is, I think that we're walking around wounded. I think that we as a society are walking around wounded. Mental health issues are just going crazy. And we have more knowledge of it now than we used to. We talk about it now more than we ever used to, and it doesn't seem like it's going away. It actually seems like more people are getting it now. Well, maybe that's because we're not suppressing it. Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, it does definitely seem like the society as a whole is more mentally fragile. And I don't know if 100% of that can be attributed to simply acknowledging it. I don't believe that. I think that there might actually be a cause for that many mental problems. And in my time in ministry, I've learned that in every chair there's a broken heart. Is the name of a book, but it is very much so applicable. Everybody's wounded, but I could be wrong. But when I read books from generations ago, they didn't seem to have the same mental struggles that we do. And obviously the point could be made, well, maybe they just weren't writing. Maybe the wounded ones just weren't writing. I understand. But I'm just saying I don't want to just simply dismiss it. There has to be some room for discussion here. So I think that the first thing is we're walking around wounded, and I think that is directly related, and I personally think the research shows this with the lack of fathers that we're seeing in society. You take, for instance, how many more people end up in violent death, going to prison, all these different things based on one simple factor of not having a father. And then you take into account how many people nowadays don't have fathers, how many people were born out of wedlock where the father didn't have a commitment to the wife or the kids, or the woman or the kids. And you see that rising, and you see people becoming more fragile as that rises. And I think that obviously we can't ignore this. The lack of strong fathers is a big indicator as to why we're walking around wounded. And you take that woundedness with you, and you go into a relationship, and it's like you sabotage it yourself because of just your emotional instability. And it's not something necessarily intentional. Sometimes it's intentional, but not necessarily something intentional, because you're carrying around all these wounds, and you don't even realize it sometimes. And I think another thing is selfishness, which I think once again goes back to that thing of, nobody's ever watched out for us, maybe, so we feel like we have to watch out for ourselves, and we kind of put ourselves up on this pedestal, and kind of walking through life in a way of trying to live guarded. And it's good to not be naive and stupid, but at the same time, if you're living for yourself, that's like a recipe for a terrible marriage. Marriages cannot thrive in an atmosphere where you're watching out for you. It just can't happen. It's an impossibility. You know what I mean? You surrender yourself for the betterment of the other person, and then hopefully the other person does the same. And if they don't, you keep doing the right thing. See, what people do is they say, okay, well, my wife or husband, isn't watching out for me, so I have to. Oh boy, and the cycle repeats. Another thing, which I think is directly related to the society that we live in, and I'll get to that in just a second. But kind of the idea of perfectionism. We have to have things just a certain way all the time, our way all the time. Everything's always got to be in its place. We're very controlling people. We think we can micromanage everything. I mean, look how, for instance, this COVID situation has been handled. Not taking sides on anything, but I mean, the overall arch here is, we can control people. We can, get what we want, safety, by, asserting dominance and controlling others that are not handling the way that I want. I'm not criticizing, not taking sides. I'm just saying there's kind of this overarching idea that I can fix it. I can fix people. I just need a little bit of time to control them. And I'm not saying anything about political parties. I mean, pastors do this all the time too. They have somebody in their church and they try to control them. They try to fix them and stuff. And some people just don't want to be fixed, and I hope you see what I'm saying. Another thing is, before I go on, I don't remember if I wrote it down in my notes or not, but the idea of perfectionism, I think, is directly related with our society. We live in a porn society and a Hollywood society, so people are looking for this perfection that doesn't exist. Sex has to meet this preconceived bias of standard, right? We grow up looking at porn, and then we get into an actual sexual relationship, and it just kind of we keep comparing it and wanting it to be something else instead of what it genuinely is. We want it to be perfect. We don't want to get with somebody who's inexperienced sexually because, then it would hamper our experience. And the thing is, sex is so much more special than it's been reduced to. And, anyways. And then, which it's funny because traditionally married people have fought. One of the big things that married people fight over, or I guess people in relationships fight over, is sex. Who's got the control and that kind of stuff. And I guess that's the funny part because nowadays, people just go to porn and then they say, hey, I haven't done anything wrong. She didn't want to have sex with me. It's like, well, and that's why your marriage is not strong because instead of working through problems, we just kind of hand it off and ignore it. And it's like, well, you can't really have a strong marriage with that. We want to control the other person. We don't want to work through our own problems. And it's just kind of like a problem with society that we're having, and we're repeating this, and we're making it out to be like, oh, it's not that bad because everybody's doing it. And it's like, well, just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean that it's not ruining marriages. Another reason that I think that we're not seeing those strong, happy marriages is our expectations. We go into it having an expectation that I don't think is based in reality. Maybe we don't have good role models. Maybe we just are too demanding of a person. Maybe we thought that the world revolves around us. I don't know. Whatever it is, we go into marriage with the wrong expectations of marriage. So we go into it thinking that we're going to change our partner, right? You're not going to change them. Thinking that it's going to relieve every spiritual ache you have in your soul. It's not. Thinking that it's going to somehow take away all your problems. It's not. So there's just all these expectations that are just wrong. They're just not true. Another reason, and I think this is the last reason I'm going to specifically mention, is that nothing really means anything anymore. Commitment doesn't really mean anything because there's always this idea that I'm committed so long as, like, it's a commitment but with stipulations. It's a commitment so long as it doesn't cost too much. I mean, look at sex. Sex is a wonderful thing that unites two people, but what has it been reduced to? Porn, one-night stands, no commitment. Hey, if we're dating, let's just go ahead and have sex. It's old-fashioned to wait. Well, You shouldn't not do something just because it appears to you to be uh, you know, ancient. Just because old people did it doesn't mean that it's like you should stop doing it. There should be some more thought to it than that. Like, oh, old people, they used to take showers too. We shouldn't take showers. Like, I mean, come on. There should be a little bit more thought process going into this. Okay, well, sex before marriage. What happens? Well, you lose a part of yourself. You become more numb. You get more heartbroken when you break up. You've reduced the pleasure and intimacy of sex to something that's just like an orgasm. That's all it is. It's all about the orgasm. It's all about, you know, that moment of pleasure. It has nothing to do with a long-term relationship. And sex is really meant to build a long-term relationship. Well, obviously, if you go from long-term relationship practices in a short-term relationship, it's going to hamper it. And so what people do is, we've been dating for 2 years. This is different. And it's like, maybe it's different to you, but there's no commitment. You don't know if they're as all in as you are, and there's just a lot of different ideas there. So I've listed a few things that I think why people are not having long-term happy marriages or happy relationships, however you want to say that. But I want to specifically focus about that perfection that I was talking about. And I've talked about this before, but sometimes our expectations are just too much for our spouse. Sometimes we go into a relationship and this is our expectation. And this is what is humanly possible, working 150% all the time. And then here's where somebody actually is. It would be unfair to hold them to the standard of what's humanly possible. But we don't. We hold them all the way up here to a standard that's completely impossible. Women, right? They get into a relationship. They expect their husband to make them feel better all the time. To be like a TV, to entertain them, to never get in fights with them, to always call them beautiful, always have the right words to say. It's a fantasy. It's impossible. Men, they go into this relationship. They expect their women to always be looking beautiful all the time. Never have like bad head, for instance. Never be in a bad mood. Always be open to sex. And then when they have sex, it's like crazy, awesome, good. There's fireworks every time you have sex, and just all these unrealistic expectations. And you can't hold somebody to those expectations because they won't meet it. Then you're going to be disappointed, and then it's going to reflect on the relationship, and that's just not reasonable. When you find somebody who is willing to live with you, and you're willing to live with them, with all the irritating things that make you you, that's a good thing. I know that doesn't sound romantic. You can make it romantic if you want to. Those are two different things. When somebody's willing to live with you and accept you, and you're willing to do the same for them, don't mess up a good thing. Now, I know that sounds like, oh, compromise, that's all I'm saying. No, actually, I'm not saying compromise. Well, compromise in a way. I am saying compromise in a way. I am saying that. You can't go to this, let me say it like this. It's okay to have standards, but have realistic standards. And have standards about things that actually matter. I have a standard that my wife doesn't have sex with other people. That's a realistic expectation. Okay? She has a standard that I will not be looking at porn. That is a realistic expectation. These are realistic expectations. Now, here's a not realistic expectation. That they never leave a mess. That they always clean up after themselves. That they always help all the time. Right? That they only say good things. That they're never in a bad mood. That they never have a bad day. That they don't ever need anything. See what I mean? These are unrealistic expectations. That they're always willing to do what you want to do. And it's just like... That's not how relationships work. It's just not possible. It's not sustainable. You might marry someone and you'll be in the honeymoon phase, right? And they'll go above and beyond to meet your every single expectation. And that'll last for I don't know, maybe a couple of days, maybe a couple months, maybe a couple years. But eventually it'll go away. And you're left with the real person. It's like sex. Oh, well, we have great sex. Well, don't base a relationship off sex. What happens when the sex is gone? Anyways, so have standards, but be realistic. don't have the attitude of everything has to be my way all the time and I'm not budging. You have to compromise in a good relationship. Meet somewhere in the middle. And I want to say again, I really think that this is another effect of the porn industry, the Hollywood culture. Everything has to be to my liking all the time. I'm a critic. You have to appease me. All this stuff, and it's just perfection. And life wasn't meant to be perfect. People weren't meant to be perfect. Sex wasn't meant to be perfect. It's meant to be something that is together. Unity is oftentimes not perfect, right? And so we've given up we've raised a false goal, the goal of perfection, and then we've supported it with these things that seem good at the time. Well, who wouldn't want to do better? Who wouldn't want it? Who wouldn't want it? And it's like, well, yes, I understand what you're saying. And although it sounds bad to say that's not the goal, that's not the goal. And so we have unattainable standards, and I already mentioned that. And the thing is, all these people who have these really high standards, I see the same thing repeated over and over again. They end up with someone who isn't a good person. They have these really, really high standards, and then they drop all of them and get with this person who's just not a good person. And if they would just look with their eyes, they would see that this relationship is not going to last. So then, inevitably, what happens? They break up, and they're alone again. And then this just reinforces their belief that, hey, I need to watch out for me because they're not going to. Yeah, because you keep getting in relationships with people who aren't good people. Look somewhere else. If you're getting in this niche and it's always these bad people, maybe you're just looking in the wrong place. And so then, we break up and we're heartbroken. Oh, everybody's like that. And it's like, no, you did the same thing again. So then we attempt to control them more, and that sabotages the relationship, and we catch ourselves in these repetitive patterns. So the thing is, you have to learn to truly accept the person with their flaws, and you have to try to learn and grow and be better. You have to learn how to change, while all the time accepting them, changing yourself. And that's a very difficult thing to do. It goes against the thing that we have here in America about gotta watch out for number one. But there's always reasons, and I have to say this as a married person of over 10 years, there's always reasons to divorce someone. There's always. If you're looking for some, perfect reason to get a divorce, you're going to find it. It's just not that hard to find a reason to divorce. You're going to find one every single day, usually. Just slow down. Enjoy it. Just enjoy one another. It's not a race. You get into some goal out there, you don't even know where you're going, but you got to get there fast. It's just slow down. Enjoy one another. Sit down on the couch and don't watch TV. Just sit there. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to have these perfect conversations all the time. Sometimes just spend time together. Go for a walk. Just slow down. Life is ticking by too fast. Don't waste it with all this stuff that you're just gonna regret. And focus in on this moment. Well, I'm concerned about where we're going. Okay, all right, I get it. Just slow down, enjoy right now. And I hope that this helps you in your relationship, or if you're starting a relationship or whatever. There's always room for compromise. So, okay, so yeah. Boop.